Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris Bend Over and Spread Game McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me for this episode is Brian Underfed Game Hickey. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at issue number 3 of Snake Eye's Deadgame as we attempt a huge catch-up of all the comics we've left behind recently. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, shall we? Superstar creator Rob Liefeld takes on fan favourite Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is caught in the crosshairs. Will he be able to escape this lethal challenge, or will he, like others before him, fall to the power of the Deadgame? Yeah, okay. Brian, how you doing, buddy? How's things?
I am doing good. I've got my issue number 3 of the Deadgame, and yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to rock this. Let's go.
I'm hoping for a better burst than the last Deadgame one we did. But anyway, let's go through the lineup of the creative talent involved here. So story and art, Rob Liefeld. Script, dialogue, Chad Bowers. Inks, Adelso Corona. Colours, Federico Blee. Letters and world design. Design, Neil Uyatake. Editor, John Barber. And assistant edits, Megan Brown. Okay, so let's get stuck into the covers first off, and not as many as previous Deadgame issues, still quite a few, and we'll start with cover A, as we always do, and that's Rob Liefeld and Federico Blee number, and it's Snake Eyes kind of in the rain with lightning behind him, holding a sword and his pistol, and all wet, water up to his thighs, and actually, I must admit, this kind of reminds me of an old Action Force. I think it was a panel, not necessarily a cover. It might have been a cover, but there was a panel in Action Force. I think when it was during the they were trying to create stories to lock into some of that Larry Hama issues, and it was almost like a preemptive silent issue storyline where Storm Shadow steals Scarlet. And Snake Eyes kind of emerges from the water. Do you remember that in the Marvel UK issues?
That kind of is ringing a bell for me, all right.
He's kind of pushed into I think like a water feature, and he kind of comes out of it all, wet and everything, and as Snake Eyes. I'll flash it up for the viewers, obviously, as we're there. But that's what this cover screams to me. And what are your thoughts?
I really like this cover. I didn't get the old Marvel kind of connection, but it's a pretty kind of cinematic sort of vibe going on here, which I think is something that you can apply to a lot of this Rob Liefeld stuff. The whole thing feels very cinematic, like almost like the Marvel universe nearly. Yeah. But it has that kind of pretty cool vibe going on there. Really nicely illustrated, beautifully coloured. It's a pretty kick-ass cover for the comic.
Absolutely. I love the rain effect on that one. And then we have cover B, which is basically Deadpool, isn't it?
Cool.
We've got so in the last issue we'd seen that Snake Eyes had been poisoned by Olympia with some poison-tipped shuriken, and it had started making his skin go red. Obviously, that was the reaction he was having, and you saw it from like the rip in his clothes. And then the next scene, we have him in an all-red costume, which was like, what? And yeah, I think that was something to do with like they dressed him in Kirigan's old rags, which just happened to be red. But I mean, none of that really makes any sense to me whatsoever. But we have this cover here, which is him in all red, Arashikage symbol on his shoulder, in white. Not the first all-red Snake Eyes cover we've had. We had one, I think we had a couple in the last issue.
Last issue, yes.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this one, bud?
I mean, again, I really like this. This is, I don't think it's as good as the cover A, but I mean, it's a pretty badass kind of cover from the waist up. From the waist down, maybe I'm not really feeling it as much. This is better appreciated with a kind of an Elvis Presley camera angle type view of it. He's just standing there looking real badass and kind of smoke and flames and stuff and around him. The coloring on it is really, really nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's those kind of brush strokes in the background and dust or little flames or sparks
Yeah.
kind of in the background. So they're pretty cool.
I should say Brian Valenza did the colours on this one. So it's Rob Liefeld cover again, but with Brian Valenza on colours. And yeah, I think I like the painterly aspect of the background as well.
I mean, Brian Valenza's work brings this to life, and I think that's really where the strength is in this. It's pretty good. That's the cover. I've got the variant B, and it's cool. I like it.
Nice. Then we get the retailer incentive, which again is Rob Liefeld again, and this time colours J. David Ramos, and it's kind of like a character scene. You've got Olympia kind of front and centre kicking Snake Eyes in the face. You've got Kurgan's portrait in the lower left-hand side, kind of big head, and then you've got Storm Shadow kind of joining the fray, the battle in the top right-hand corner with swords drawn. Dynamic, action-packed. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is really harkens back to some of the action that we're going to get into in this particular issue. There's something weird about the way, I'm very critical of this whole series, but I'm going to be saying some positive stuff about this particular issue. But before I get into the positive stuff here, there's something about the way Olympia is drawn that reminds me of a time when I went for an interview for an art college many, many years ago. We're going back to 91, 92.
1891, right?
That's it. Yeah. And I had some life drawing in my portfolio, and I had done it straight out of my head. There was no kind of reference material to work from when I did these. It was just male and female nudes, and they were just straight out of my head. And the guy interviewing me and looking at my portfolio just sort of gestures towards the kind of the pelvic area of some of the characters and goes, "That could do with a bit more work." And that's what I'm feeling when I'm looking at this cover of Olympia here.
Yeah.
It just, the anatomy just feels all wrong.
Yeah.
Not my favorite cover. And we've had some exceptional covers in this particular run, and this just looks pretty weak as a cover.
I must admit, if you, without sounding really perverted, if you zoom in and have a real close look at that area, there is a really strange kind of, the way the right thigh is connecting to the body, and the way the body shape goes really tight in at the waist, but then there's this little I don't know, it just does not look right. You're right, there's a weirdness going on there that just doesn't look natural and kind of weird, and yeah, there's an odd shape there. But other than that, yeah, there's everything else is composed really nicely, and there's always going to be exaggeration, isn't there, in Rob Liefeld anatomy. But I must admit with you, I think there's something just not right about the shape there. Almost like the legs aren't the right size for the upper body as well. But anyway,
the proportions are off and stuff. But I mean, it's again, it's dynamic. It's linking in with the story, and I've become much more accepting of this particular series. We're not going to get answers to all our questions. That's never going to happen. So I'm just enjoying the ride now. And in fairness, this issue is a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Getting into this.
Finally, we have the Unknown Comics exclusive covers A and B, and it's these are really cool. You've got Snake Eyes from behind, kind of attack stance with ninjas coming at him, holding his sword, but he's got a finger up, almost like saying shush, or almost in a really cool ass pose. This is, by the way, Kyle and Yu who did this one. I think this is beautiful, and I love that kind of red flash across the cover A, and then B is almost like a black and white version where you've got the green slash, and you've got that kind of lighting up the ninjas, but then also you've got the red of the Arashikage logo on his shoulder. So there's some real. I love both of these covers. I think they're gorgeous.
These are amazing, and that's what I'm talking about when I say there's been some great covers in this particular series, and Kyle Ngu's been bringing the magic. I think he's had covers at nearly all of these issues so far. So these are spectacular kind of exclusive covers to get, and if you're lucky enough to pick up one of these, happy days. It'll be well worth the retail price.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's get stuck the in then, shall we? Sorry, I'm getting all aggressive. Let's get stuck the in to Deadgame issue tray, or dry, or 3 for those English speakers. Tres. So what have we got then, mate? We've got a classic. Well, it says the end, which is interesting. It starts off with the end. It's like I don't know. you could say it's a kind of Pulp Fiction style timeline here. And obviously we've come back to this battle between Thor and Kirigan. And in the previous issue, it looked like Kirigan was getting the upper hand. We've still got this kind of like back and forth going, and now Thor is getting the upper hand. He absolutely thwacks him with Mjolnir, punches him in the face, and then he's down for the count. And then this is like almost where Kirigan is going to get sentenced to his eternal death, I guess. And then we get and then we come straight back out of that into the regular story. But what are your thoughts regarding this Thor Kirigan thing? Is it just a very basic, simple, just flashback to show how Kirigan got in this situation in the first place? Is that what we're dealing with here, or do you think there's going to be something more to it?
I mean, I think it's just a flashback to kind of bring us up to speed. Like, Kirigan has been buried in the earth for millennia, or, well, maybe not millennia, but certainly, hundreds and hundreds of years. And this has shown us it was Thor who put him there. So they had this big duel of the gods after, Kirigan went on a murder spree, and Thor takes him down. It's not an easy fight for Thor. He does get his ass handed to him, but he eventually gets the upper hand. And once he removes the sword from Kirigan's hand, it's game over, and Kirigan is going down. And he begs to be killed, but Thor refuses to grant him that. And when he says, "No, death's too good for you. You're going to suffer." And
Harsh.
All we can assume is that the suffering is, being buried in the ground for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, unless we get a final wrap up on this in issue number 5.
Absolutely. We kind of get transported somewhere near the Gulf of Benzine, the Middle East, present day, 1930 hours, which is nice. Like we get like another homage to the original Marvel run here, and the fact that one of Larry Hammer's made up country/locations, I should say, gets a shout out. And we kind of, in the last issue, we had Snake Eyes Scarlet kind of infiltrating this island and off the Gulf of Benzine, which I don't think we knew that. I think it just said secret location before. I don't think we knew that it was the Gulf of Benzine before. Correct me if I'm wrong, viewers/listeners. And basically, they infiltrated this island. They came across the intruder. Snake Eyes took the intruder out as if he was nothing. And then we had Olympia join the fray. She then took on Snake Eyes. She incapacitated him and took him away. Scarlet was about to take her out with a shot, but Storm Shadow turned and grabbed her and stopped her, and kind of knocked her out. Then we got to this stage where Snake Eyes and Kirigan was holding Snake Eyes above this pit with a giant effing snake in it, and this was going to be the moment where they send Snake Eyes in for these kind of challenges to see whether he is a worthy rival to battle Kirigan, I guess, for the Deadgame. I have no idea what's going on, so I've made the last amount of that up completely. I just, it sounds ridiculous to me, but I think that's what's happening. Anyway, Snake Eyes is now kind of sitting on this rock, kneeling on this rock with his arms tied up, waiting to battle this snake. And Kirigan and Olympia are talking, chatting away. Very kind of simple scenario stuff here. And we get a number of pages where this conversation continues. Snake Eyes is there in all his red gear, and we eventually, I suppose the explanation is being made as to what is actually going on, but none of it's still making any sense to me. What are your takeaways before we get into the kind of action element of this issue? At
the end of issue 2, Snake Eyes was being tossed into the pit, and the snake was there, mouth open, ready to eat him. Now he's in the pit. There's no snake, and we're getting this kind of like exposition, which is really starting to, just give us a little bit of backstory on Corrigan, and how he ends up becoming this weird, demented kind of god figure who is just constantly, trying to just kill all the time. And that's really, he has this insatiable appetite for death.
Yeah.
So really, his end game in all of this is that he's just going to kill everybody. He's going to kill everyone on the planet if he's allowed to do what he's set out to do. So we kind of get all this exposition to bring all this up to speed, and then now that we know what his kind of ultimate, bad guy master plan goal is, that's when Snake Eyes is reflected in his visor as the face of this giant snake. And I'm
going to read the exposition because I think that's going to make more sense than me trying to explain it. So I'm going to quickly rinse through this for everybody. But it says, In ages past, a holy man left his loved ones to fight a war he could not escape. Despite a devout nature, he was good at killing, a talent that caught the death goddess Izanami's attention. Sorry, I had to double check that was right. She came to him one day with news from home his family had vanished. To ease his sorrow, Izanami offered to restore his wife and children if he played the Deadgame. Izanami vowed long ago to end life faster than the other gods could create it, a contest of souls. With the newly christened Grave Master as her executioner, she could not lose. She gave him an unbreakable sword and sent him out to do his worst. But he did his job too well, the world torn asunder, his bargaining power gone, and with it Izamani's promise. To regain her favour, he turned to higher stakes. Surely slaying gods would impress Izanami. Immortals proved more difficult than man, and soon he found defeat, but not death. The gods and his swords placed mystical safeguards upon it to keep it from him should he return. And if those magics somehow failed, there was Jormungandr, the world serpent. So that's what we've got here. And I kind of, it's cute to have all this like fun little, I don't know, history, not history, but like mythological explanation and backstory and everything, but there's no way of me explaining that any better than was written in the actual exposition, so I couldn't even summarize it. But basically, that's what this...
I tried and it made no sense.
So that's what this big feckin' snake's there for, basically. It's just guarding this sword, and I guess this is what we're dealing with here. Is the MacGuffin? Is this Deadgame sword, isn't it?
Pretty much. So Snake Eyes is now in the pit. He's going up against Jormungandr. I don't know if Snake Eyes knows that the snake is protecting the sword or not, but he immediately does what you would do in any battle against a giant snake, is he jumps into its mouth. And then it flashes back to Storm Shadow, who's outside and who is observing.
Actually, it was Storm Shadow that was narrating as well.
He's given us, again, a little bit of a flashback to the Hard Master, who always told it best, but he's not around to do that anymore. Lucky for Snake Eyes, and I'm a better ninja than I am a storyteller.
Damn right.
Less exposition from Storm Shadow.
Well, actually, I think Storm Shadow is narrating that previously, mate. I think he's narrating the story of Jormungandr.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah,
okay.
He's literally, because he starts off with, there was a story the Hard Master used to tell. So Storm Shadow's been like basically telling this. He's been narrating the whole thing the whole time. So the Hard Master's actually this is the link, I guess, to Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and the Arashikage, is that the Hard Master knew of all this. And that's why Snake Eyes and that's why Storm Shadow's wise of what's going on as well, which is kind of fills in a little gap. But effectively now what we're getting is this battle between Snake Eyes and Jormungandr. And I don't know how to pronounce it. It just sounds funny when I put that silly voice on. And then obviously Storm Shadow joins the fray to help battle the giant snake. And it's all like jumping and flying and swords sticking in and snakes and dragging the sword down the throat of the snake and shooting at the snake. This is kind of weird because I know Storm Shadow is very much against using guns. He's all like bow, arrow, swords, ninja weapons, etc., etc. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever seen Storm Shadow use a gun in the Marvel run. He may have done, and I've just missed it completely. But usually he's all ninja and and that's it. That's not to say that he may have had guns as accessories in some figures. I don't think he has, honestly. And so we get this kind of one scene where he's shooting at it, saying, he actually mentions it, doesn't he?
It's not as dignified as a bow, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, that's the one. And it just seems, I don't know, a little out of character for Storm Shadow there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Storm Shadow is very much, he's old school. It's bows, it's swords, it's shuriken. Can't even list all the different kind of blade weapons that he uses. But you wouldn't usually see him. Like Snake Eyes is the guy who'll use guns. He'll have the Uzi or whatever, but it's Storm Shadow is more blades and arrows. So yeah, it's a bit out of character. He's doing a lot of damage on the snake with like the gun. It's it's like some sort of cannon nearly the damage it's doing, like big explosions all over the snake's back. But he passes a sword to Snake Eyes.
Yeah, that's pretty neat, isn't it? When he just throws it and he just catches it, and yeah, that's dope.
And then, as you say, Snake Eyes rips open the belly of the snake.
And then he sees Kirigan's dead sword as well, doesn't he? In that moment.
That's right. He kind of like slides all the way down the snake to the ground, massively injuring the snake, and sees the sword, and he goes straight for that. Now he's got two swords, though in the artwork he flips between kind of having one sword and two swords.
Oh yeah.
That's strong. And then himself and Storm Shadow, kind of, the snake is pretty much defeated. They team up down at the bottom, and now they're going to work their way back up, thanks to Storm Shadow's grappling hook, to battle it out with Kirigan and Olympia. And this is what I love about this issue. It's just one epic battle.
Yeah. And
it reminds me of, say, someone like Pat Mills, who would do these kind of battle scenes that could run for, in 2008, it could run for about 6 issues of battle.
Yeah.
Which is the equivalent of what we're getting here, effectively, about 30 pages of action. So that's what I'm really liking about this. Who cares about the story anymore when it's never going to be resolved? But just sit back and enjoy the ass kicking that's being dished out here.
Yeah, it's quite a fast-paced kind of storyline. Not storyline, but like comic. Like, you don't really linger on stuff, and I find myself very kind of glazing over sometimes some of the exposition, just because I feel like it. The story was quite interesting, but like there can be times where I think it's you have to give a lot of exposition when dealing with a Snake Eyes story, because he doesn't speak, so you can't have that subtlety. You can't just say one thing and it mean a lot more than just that one thing that is said. You have to kind of explain everything to an nth degree a lot of the time. You kind of hope that some of the artwork can deal with the storytelling, but I think in some cases you really do need that information. And I don't know, sometimes I'm fighting against trying to read it at the pace that it wants me to read it, but then getting caught up in having to read the exposition and soak it in and actually take some of that story into my brain. I feel like the two things are sometimes conflicting with each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so fast, and the images are quite impactful. They do draw your eye, and sometimes I find certainly I kind of have to force myself to go back and just reread the text to kind of follow along. And
that's not to say as well that I don't like what, in terms of the writing and all that kind of stuff, I don't have any issues with it at all. It's just that I feel like, because of those points, because of the fact that Snake Eyes, like I said, can't talk, and it's left to like a lot of narration from other characters, a lot of just narration in general, that you tend to like get stuck where you want to freely move through it, where an issue where you've got the main character can speak, you don't have to pack it with characters in order to fill their quota of speech, if that makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why I think they had to bring Storm Shadow into this fight here, was to allow Snake Eyes that opportunity to have things explained in that battle between him and the snake, because otherwise what would you have? You'd just have panels and panels of him just fighting a snake, and it'd be like a silent issue for that aspect, wouldn't it?
I mean, it would, and it would still kind of work, I think.
Yeah.
If that were the case, but again, the text is kind of, in fairness, it is revealing a little bit more about Corrigan's past and his motives for what he's doing. So I suppose in that regard, giving the abuse that I laid out on issue 2 of Deadgame, I think, I have to kind of say, well, like, fair play, that there is a little bit of, filling in the gaps here for us, the readers. And that is great to get that. But we essentially have in our fight, we've got this pairing. We have Storm Shadow squares up against Corrigan, and Olympia and Snake Eyes kind of match up, and they just knock lumps out of each other. We have a situation where Storm Shadow eventually begins, and I'm really ripping through it here, starts to get the upper hand over Corrigan, and then Corrigan starts taking him back down, and you think it's kind of game over for Storm Shadow, and then all of a sudden, boom, character reveal, and we have
Bullet Man.
Invincible, indestructible, bulletproof, don't make a difference.
None of them were Bullet Man proof. Brilliant.
So and then he grabs, but Olympia and Corrigan have the dead sword now,
Yes.
and it's a big square off between our adventure team, Storm Shadow, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes, and Corrigan and Olympia with the dead sword.
And then we get that final reveal, don't we, as well? Like as Kerrigan gets the sword in his possession, it's like, right, here we go. You see like what I think is a helicopter. It's really hard to kind of tell. Like they've really made that. This has happened a couple of times where you don't really see what they're emerging from, but I'm guessing it's some sort of helicopter or ship or something. Anyway, it's Joe Colton, Mike Powers, Bullet Man, Scarlet, Storm Shadow, and Snake Eyes. Now that's the team we've got. That's the team up. Now before we've lost Roadblock, we've lost Tripwire, we've lost not to death, but to just disappearing in from one issue to the next. There was one other, wasn't there, that was involved in that? Maybe. No, I think that was it. Actually, I think it was they rescued. Well, I guess that was the rescue team for Joe Colton, and now this is the attack team. This is the super powered, I guess. Other than obviously Joe Colton, they've incorporated Mike Powers and Bullet Man, who are have those more, I suppose, super powered kind of traits to them. But again, some nice throwbacks to some vintage G.I. Joe and Action Force stuff here.
I mean, it ends on a kind of a great kind of cliffhanger here. We've got the bad guys have their ultimate weapon back, but the good guys have got a really formidable force put together, and they're squaring up for what you think is going to be an even bigger showdown going into episode 4. And that's it. It ends there. So I would say, taking this issue 3 on its merits, this is a pretty good issue. We get a little bit more, some of the gaps filled in story-wise, loads of action. I mean, it's just one big massive battle.
Yeah. And
then it ends with a setup for what looks like it's going to be an even bigger battle going into episode 4.
Absolutely. What would you give this one then in a potatings department?
I still have reservations over this, and I think for a superstar artist like Rob Liefeld, I am expecting a little bit more. Okay, like we have, his art style, I have no problem with his art style, but the way he's drawn some of the fight scene characters, he clearly hasn't gone with any reference material to inform the poses in some of these martial arts moves. And if you compare his work, briefly to someone like Nito Diaz, where, you look at any of his kind of Snake Eyes work or Dawn of the Arashikage work, and he's done his research. He knows how to do a fight scene with martial arts, with swords, and make it look dynamic and what you would expect it to look like, in terms of an agile kind of ninja kicking ass. And we've been spoiled. We've had so much Nito Diaz work over the last few years. We have been spoiled rotten with his amazing artwork that, maybe we've come to take it a bit for granted. But then you see this here, and it's somebody who doesn't really know how to draw that kind of fight scene. And in parts it's okay, but in other parts it looks really clumsy. So that's my kind of big critique here. This particular issue is that, I think the art style for something that relies so heavily on the action, could have done with being a little bit more researched or referenced. So for that, but it is very fast paced. It does fill in some of the stories, and I did enjoy this issue a lot. So I'm going in with a 3.5 on this one, which I think is a big step up from my last week 2 potatoes.
Yeah.
So nice job to the team on this one. I think it's definitely a step up, going in the right direction. I like the big ending. It's a big setup for I hope issue 4 is going to be one massive, even more epic confrontation. But we shall see.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the last issue was a low point, I would say, but I didn't actually go as low as you. It was the first time you'd ever gone lower than me on a score. I'd have to agree, though. I think I was going to come in at about 3.5. So you may even be. Yeah, I think I'm going to say a 3 on this one, just mainly because I didn't have. I'm feeling pretty much. It doesn't seem to have changed dramatically in terms of what I feel is last issue's quality was low. I think this issue, I don't think it's really done that much more for me. I agree with what you're saying, where you have to stop thinking about any kind of storyline or plot and just enjoy some of the action, I guess. But I find myself kind of looking at a lot of it, again, another pretty obvious mistake on the same panel where he's got one sword in one hand and then the back shot is him with two swords. And it's kind of like, can you not clearly see that when you're doing the art, that he's got one sword in one shot and two in the other? It just seems like a very odd mistake to make when you've got the act on one page. So that was a weird one. And then that whole point I was making about, I feel like the art wants you to be rinsing through this. It wants you to be moving through each panel and seeing the action and the fight really quickly. And I think, and this is no slight on any of the text in there, because it needs to be there. Otherwise, you've got no. It just feels like there's no real storytelling pace going on. I feel like the two things are at odds with each other. I feel like, and I think that's where there's a problem, where you've got one person doing an art and story and another person filling in script. That to me, I think is like a really difficult thing to do. Like, you either do everything as one person, like a Michel Fiffe style thing, or you do art. One of you does the art and the other one does the script, and one comes before the other. And in that the story kind of should come, and then you draw it based on that, and then the script goes to work on filling that, all those gaps. I feel that this is like a completely opposite way of doing things, or it's a different way of doing things, and I don't think it's necessarily effective for me. So I'm still going to be in like the three potatoes here for this one, because I had to go through maybe 3 or 4 times to really get a grasp of what not was going on, because it's very simple, but the reasoning behind it is the confusing part. It's like, and you have to also, there's that element of, well, just be patient, because some things will be explained. Some things probably won't be explained, which we've also discussed, haven't we? That's probably something that we have to take into consideration. And yeah, so I think I'm trying to be as positive as possible, but at the same time, like, I'm just not really getting a lot out of the Deadgame issues so far. Like, the first one was interesting, but only, when I look back at it, if it's one big run so far, it's not really doing much for me. And I'm, again, kind of hoping 4 and 5 really changed my mind on that.
I've just got to say, I think Rob Liefeld's been pretty lazy on this one, both in terms of a story. He's thrown in some half-baked ideas. This could have been epic. It could have been effing epic. And he just didn't bother his ass to make it. I think it's something he maybe is not really that passionate about. I think someone like Chad Barrows has to work really, really hard to try and knit together all these gaps in the story, with, to fill all that in with the script and dialogue. And then things like, he's got one sword, and then in the picture right beside him, he's got 2 swords, and he's back to having one sword. That's just sloppy at the end of the day. And this is supposed to be a superstar. Like, IDW are saying, we've got superstar artist Rob Liefeld doing Snake Eyes at Deadgame. Well, he sure as hell ain't acting like a superstar, because there's sloppy moments in this as well. And I think, if you want some really good ninja combat sequences, just pick up any Idw G.I illustrated A Real American Hero, and you'd be happy out. You'll top Rob Liefeld any day of the week.
That's fighting words from Brian Hickey there. Yeah, and I mean, it's been a weird one, hasn't it, Deadgame so far? Like, I was really intrigued when it was kind of announced, but I don't know. It's just doing nothing for me, and that is. It's hard to do with, like, I usually get something out of like a G.I. Joe title, no matter what the scenario. So I feel kind of like really disappointed and kind of like a little bit deflated so far. And again, like, I don't have any issues with, like, sci-fi elements or mystical or mythic elements or anything like that. I really don't mind it. I love Sunbow, so like all the most ridiculous concepts and stuff, I really enjoy that as a for what it is. I just feel like this is, you could effectively take Snake Eyes out of this, take the G.I. Joe characters out of this, and just replace with, any other but actual, not any other, but just superheroes. And I feel like that's what you could do, and it would be, I don't know, it would make more sense. Be the same. Exactly. Yeah, totally. So yeah, it's a bit of a letdown, really. But anyway, we've still got 4 and 5. We've got 4 which is out at the moment, which I have actually read, but we won't spoil. We won't spoil that now. You get to listen to that for half an hour to 40 minutes on another episode. But yeah, this is. Yeah, it's a 3 for me, and which isn't, again, 3 isn't bad actually. An out of 5, it's actually a pretty good score. I'm being very generous there, but it's definitely better than the last issue, and I can't remember what I gave the last issue.
I think it would have about a 3.5 as well in the last one.
Yeah, so it's there and thereabouts, I would say, and I would also hope to death that issue 4 gives me more, basically. And one of the things that really is, it's just like a head scratcher, and it's not that big a deal, but it's that whole red thing. Like, his skin's going red, and then he's in a red costume, and it was like, it is explained, but almost like thrown in there just to cover that base, because it makes no sense.
Well, I mean, as well, like last week, Olympia's face mask was all shattered, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It's not like the time had passed. It was
exactly.
just from one panel to the next.
Yeah, there was like, that it was perfectly fine after the fight, wasn't it? Like, absolutely pristine after the battle and Snake Eyes was out, and then the next scene you see it's broken, and it's either that Kirigan's punched her in the face for letting him down, or Snake Eyes was kind of still in and out of consciousness and was causing a trouble on the route back to Benzine. But none of that's explained. Like, if that was the case, it would have been mentioned. It would have said, like, he gave me a bit of trouble on the way in, kind of thing, and had to, anything like that. But what's the point at that stage? Like, it just doesn't seem. There seems to be a bit of miscommunication there, doesn't there, as well? Like, what's actually going on here? What is the story to this? Because it kind of makes no sense.
It reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where the kids are in the recording studio and Krusty the Clown walks in and he goes, let me show you how a pro does it. And he just rattles off all the lines real quick and then walks out the door. And then the guy in the sound engineering booth goes, okay, we're ready for you now, Krusty. and I think there's a little bit of that going on here now with Rob Liefeld. I think he's just swanning in here like a superstar. He goes, let me show you how it's done. And he's just scribbling these things down on fucking napkins or post-its. Right, and then he's walking. Then he f***s off, and then you've got like either Lesso Corona, and it's like trying to put all these post-its together, and he's like, "How the f*** am I going to ink this?" Shit? And and he calls Chad Barrows on the phone, and he says, "I'm going to email this over to you, Chad. I don't know what the f*** is going on here. Well, look, maybe you can do something out of it." And then they pull something together, and then it's over to the rest of the team to try and make something out of this just scribbled pile of notes that Rob Liefeld's throwing at them. I just feel he's not really engaging here. I'm going to be sued. Rob Liefeld's lawyers on the phone right now.
I don't think anyone listens.
Get that guy's number. We're going to do a number on that guy. Nobody gives out about Rob Liefeld live on the air.
I must. I have to, like, for me, it's more of a It's like I kind of see that as well. Like, it is what it is as well. Like, we kind of, I think our expectations are high because of who's attached to it, and he is a big name in comics, like massive name. And let's talk about some positive aspects here. The sales have been huge, and I know a lot of that is down to kind of a lot of alternate covers and stuff like that. But still, it's still a pretty good thing. It gets the name and the brand out there again to a bigger commercial audience. Again, the Snake Eyes is getting bigger and bigger as an iconic character again, and again with the film in the background.
With a movie, in the works.
Yeah.
It's well out of the works at this stage. But I mean,
so I have there's a lot of positives in that sense. It's. But yeah, in terms of the actual product itself, there's just something that is not quite grasping me, and that's and yourself as well. Like that, this isn't. We're not saying like it's the worst comic and you shouldn't buy it at all. Like but what I'm saying here and what we're saying is that it's just not really doing it for us. And we can say that. That's totally within our, that's within our rights and within our purview to do. And also, it's not like we are just criticizing for the sake of criticizing here. There's another aspect to it where we are, focusing on what we are enjoying in it, and also why we think some of those things aren't really kind of working. So yeah, for me, that's really as simple as it gets for me. And again, when we had that first issue, I was kind of excited still. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'll enjoy to see where this goes. And it's just been, it just hasn't really reached that after issue 3. We've got issue 4. Kind of a bit concerned about that coming up, but because again, the other thing is I don't want to be bad mouthing anything. That's the other thing, but you kind of have to sometimes. You kind of have to say well, this isn't really working.
No, look, we're just giving honest opinions here. If there were no other G.I. Joe comics on the market, and if this was the only title that was out there, and you picked it up, you'd be like, hey, this isn't bad, because it's not bad, okay, but it's very easy to, because everything else G.I. Joe is at such a high standard in comparison to this. I mean, I think the Paul Aller universe, that's incredible what's going on there right now at the minute. And then even Larry Hama has had way more highs than lows as a writer, and he's working with a really great art team over the last few years, in recent years. I just think because that work is so good, this is not coming anywhere close in terms of quality. And that's why it's very easy to bash this, but it's because we've been spoiled. Yeah, totally. If the Larry Hama universe wasn't out there, if Paul Aller and Chris Evenhouse and Brittany Peer weren't doing their book, and if this was all we had, you'd be buying this and be going, we'd be probably scoring this much higher with the ratings for sure. But I just don't think it's standing up to the other great work that IDW have been putting out there for G.I. Joe.
Yep, I agree with that one. And that brings us to the end of this. It's turned into quite a long episode. We were talking with these won't take us very long because there's hardly anything goes on in them, and we've just talked them almost to death. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this one. We've got, speaking of A Real American Hero, we've got issue 278, which we'll do next. And then Castlefall as soon as we get round to it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we've still got to catch up on. Then obviously we've still got Deadgame to finish off. There'll be, by the time we get to the end of all this backlog, we'll still have probably 279 will be out of The Real American Hero, and probably even Deadgame 5. So I will say I'm really amazed that it's all come out in quite recently, because there was a time when the first issue came out and then there was a huge gap between that and the second issue, and I didn't think we'd see it. I thought it was going to be the case of this has happened and we're never going to see issue 2. So I'm amazed we're at issue 4 right now. So that is a testament to the guys. They are doing their best to kind of get this out as well. That's another positive, I guess.
Absolutely. And fair play to, there's a lot of people, we only talk about the writers, artists, colorists, but there's so many people work on these titles to get them out there. And thank you, to all the people behind the scenes whose names we don't even know, for all the work to do and getting the comics out there, which is obviously great. And thank you again. Yeah,
that's true, actually. Thanks, guys, for making these comics in the first place that we then destroy with our critique. But no, again, that doesn't mean I don't want to see more Rob Liefeld stuff in G.I. Joe at all, and that isn't the case. I just, like I said, this has just not grabbed me. And with that said, that's it for this installment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Brian Hickey, who has gone from the most positive reviewer we've ever had to now the most aggressively negative. See you next time, and as always, Full Force! Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.